Hello and welcome to the Red Leaf Card, your home for Canadian soccer news and views. My name is Jacob and today we're going to be recapping the 2025 Canadian Premier League Finals and the FIFA Under-17 World Cup. And our guest on our show is Charlie O'Connor Clark from One Soccer of Media and Contact. Nice to having you, Charlie.
Thanks for having me, Jacob. Appreciate it.
So, as noticed, the Canadian Premier League Finals was, I would have to say, the final best match in the Canadian Premier League history. And your thoughts of the Canadian Premier League Finals of 2025?
It was pretty remarkable. I've covered the CPL since the very beginning in 2019. I've been working with the league, and I've definitely never seen anything quite like that. We knew that there was going to be a little bit of snow on Sunday, but I don't think anybody quite expected it to go quite like that or to have that much snow, which made for a lot of fun. It wasn't necessarily the best football I think we've seen this year in the CPL, but both teams, Atletico Ottawa and Cavalry, had to adapt to the conditions, which I think made for a pretty interesting competitive storyline. And then obviously the goals we saw from David Rodriguez in Atletico Ottawa, just what a star he is and has been all year, and it's kind of fitting that he was the hero for Ottawa in this game. And really credit to him and to that entire Ottawa team for really getting the best of the elements in a pretty remarkable evening in Ottawa.
Yeah, David Rodriguez was one of the shows. One famous goal that David Rodriguez showed really a viral in worldwide, now seeing as 1 billion views, as shown on social media, as known, for example, a famous streamer called I Show Speed even saw it, even Fox Sports, ESPN, even more from other sports casts out there saw very interest of that goal. Just your thoughts, that bicycle kick, or you call it the icicle kick.
Yeah, it was. I've never really seen anything quite like that in soccer anywhere. I mean, I was down by the pitch, so I didn't actually have a great view of the goal itself when it first went in. I saw Ottawa score. I ran down to the corner to start filming the celebration and things like that. And then a couple of minutes later, I kind of looked at the replay. Kind of somebody told me, you really need to look at that goal, and I realized that it was a Rodriguez bicycle kick. And just it is remarkable. It's an incredible thing to try in the snow, but I mean, frankly, it might have been the best thing to try, because at that point in the game, there's so much snow on the field that the ball is really hard to get a good touch on. You can't really move it along the ground very easily, so it's easiest to hit the ball out of the air. Obviously, it's a pretty outrageous and daring thing for Rodriguez to do, and it's impressive that he's able to get that kind of that kind of contact on the ball. But it really was kind of a game where it seemed like it needed something magical like that to happen for a team to score from open play. And credit to Rodriguez, who has provided more magic than anybody else in the CPL this year.
Yeah, even David Rodriguez even said in the press that he's not even witnessed even snow in his life while even touching Canada.
Yeah. He said I think he saw a little bit out the car window when he first arrived in February, but he'd really never been outside in it. He'd never set foot in it. He'd certainly never tried to play in it or to even run in it. But I think you could tell how his style of play almost suited it a little bit. He was able to use those kind of choppy little steps of his to get a little bit of pace and acceleration, and that he really embraced the cold. After the first few minutes, it didn't seem to bother him at all.
Yeah. As noticed, this is going to be Atletico Ottawa's first, being the North Star Cup champions. but they qualify to the CONCACAF Champions Cup. And this is a big accomplishment for Atletico Ottawa to the CONCACAF Champions Cup. And it's now for Canadian teams being in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. Your thoughts having 4 Canada teams there?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's very exciting. I mean, we've seen what that competition can do for teams and how much it means to Canadian teams to be in it. We saw obviously this year the Whitecaps went all the way to the final, which is a pretty fantastic run, and even Cavalry from the Canadian Premier League, they beat a Mexican team in the first leg at sort of home in Langford, and then obviously bowed out by 1 goal in the second leg. But we've seen how much that tournament means to the Canadian teams, especially the Canadian Premier League teams that have been in it. It's just a chance to kind of show your quality and your club off to some of the biggest clubs, in North America, but really the world. And I think it's pretty incredible that we're going to have a couple other teams that have never done that before in Vancouver FC and Atletico Ottawa get an opportunity to do that next February. And I think that's really the most important part, is that those 2 clubs are going to get a taste of that international stage of what it's like to play against these teams from outside of Canada. Whether they get an MLS team or a Liga MX team, they're going to be playing against very, very high quality opponents. And even if obviously they're difficult games to be competitive in, but regardless, you learn a lot about the environments you have to go play in, and the style of play, and the refereeing, and all the things that can happen when you go on the road in CONCACAF. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun to see 3 Canadian Premier League teams as well as the Whitecaps in there next year.
Yeah, but the question is, for this coming in for Atletico Ottawa in the CONCACAF Champions Cup, will they actually play at home?
We don't know yet. We don't know yet. I mean, these are all things that have to be discussed. They have to be looked at by CONCACAF officials and by club officials and stadium owners. There's a lot of pretty specific rules that CONCACAF has around, what makes a stadium suitable for a Champions Cup game. And that's things like the lights and the pitch and the locker room facilities and all of that. You need a lot of things in a stadium for it to be, for lack of a better word, legal for CONCACAF's competitions. And all that's going to happen over the next few weeks as these clubs kind of decide, and in discussion with CONCACAF, whether they're able to play at home. Obviously, everybody wants to play at home. It's uniquely difficult in Calgary because they play on a grass pitch, and it's very difficult to grow grass in Alberta in the middle of winter. But we'll find out over the next few weeks. But frankly, I mean, in Ottawa at least, we certainly saw that snow and icy conditions did not stop them from playing the CPL final this week. So personally, I don't necessarily see a reason why they couldn't play there in February.
Yeah, it's going to be great for the Canadian teams showing their best for the CONCACAF Champions Cup, but also Canada's national team for the Under-17 World Cup. We've seen some unfortunate events that Canada moves on to the round of 32 knockout stage, and it was probably a group stage that we've never seen that Canada fought in.
Yeah, Canada's Under-17s have been a pretty good story over the last couple of weeks. They have been at a lot of Under-17 World Cups. Canada has over the last few years. I think they qualified for something like 9 straight tournaments, but they had never actually won a game at the tournament, which was a little bit of a disappointment over the years. They'd had a lot of opportunities and been to this stage a lot, but they'd always been unable to get it done on that stage. So for the U-17s to come into that first game, they played Uganda, honestly weren't playing very well for most of the game, fell behind in the first half. Uganda obviously had a lot of fans there because it's their first game at any sort of World Cup at any level. But Canada kind of got away with it in the end. They score 88th minute equalizer off a corner, and then they win a penalty deep in stoppage time and score it in the 98th minute to win that game for their first ever win at an Under-17 World Cup. and then you come out of that one to play France. You fight them off to a 0-0 draw, and frankly, even the third game against Chile, they had an opportunity. They obviously fell behind, or sorry, had the lead in the first half thanks to Shola Jimo. Fell behind in the second, had an opportunity to equalize with a penalty right at the end of the game, and if they'd scored it, then I believe they would have finished top of the group. But even still, they don't win that game. They ended up losing it, but they still they advanced to the round of 32, technically as the second place team in Group K, and that is a pretty impressive achievement for this Canada team, and this group of U17s who now get to go on and face the Republic of Ireland, who have a squad featuring a former Canadian youth international, former Canadian Premier League player in Grady McDonald. So that's going to be a fun matchup as well, I believe, on Friday morning.
Yeah, and you mentioned about Group K of it, and all the teams that I would never seen that all the countries finish with 4 points in this group. Like your thoughts that all that countries that finished with 4 points.
Yeah, it was it was a very close group. I don't know if everybody fully expected it to be, but credit to all of these teams. Credit to Uganda, who beat France. I don't think a lot of people noticed that they beat France on I guess what was this, Tuesday morning, and they got a draw off Chile. So for the fact that Canada were able to beat them is maybe all the more impressive. So these teams, and it's always interesting at the under 17 level because it kind of comes in waves. A player's time in the under 17 group is so short that one year's team is so different from the next, and some years a country has a really good generation of U17s, and some years they don't. So you can't really look at the names of the countries playing in these games and think, well, France are always good at the senior level, so their under 17s must be great. Or Uganda's national team at the senior level, you don't really hear from them, so they're nothing to worry about. It's not quite like that at the U17 level. So any team can be very dangerous on any day. But I think this group was a good example of that. It was just four teams that kind of got to know each other pretty well, and all really didn't give away much. Every single game in this group was either a draw or a 1-goal game. So I do think that goes to show kind of how close it was, and how much things could have changed. Unfortunately for Chile, they also finished with 4 points, and they are going home. So that's just kind of how tough it can be at a World Cup.
Yeah. Also, even in the World Cup, seeing some upsets here that the host nation does not move on to the round of 32. And again, there's probably a lot, I think, Charlie, in your mind that seeing Canada versus Ireland, like this is something that I think you would say. What are your predictions in this matchup for Canada and Ireland?
Yeah, I'm certainly a little split personally as a dual citizen, but it should be fun. I think that you would probably guess that Canada are slight favorites for this one, just given that they were a little bit better in the group stage and have historically been. But this Irish team is no joke. They have a lot of talented players. Michael Noonan has been kind of their captain, one of their best players. He scores a lot of goals for them. He plays professionally for Shamrock Rovers in Ireland, which is always a huge benefit to a player at this level. Very few of these players are playing professionally, but he scored twice in the knockouts, or in the group stage. Sorry, and he's a player to watch. And as I mentioned, Grady McDonald in midfield, he also scored for Ireland against Uzbekistan. A lot of us know about him if we've been watching the Canadian Premier League. Went from Vancouver FC to Club Brugge for a league record fee, and he's continued to push on there, and he's always been an important part of the Irish youth national setup. So he's a player to watch, and it's going to be a tricky game for Canada, who now have a golden opportunity to make a pretty decent run at a World Cup.
Yeah, and notice that the Canada's national team's roster, Shola Jimo, and also Canadian Premier League champ as Sergei Kozlovsky. Your thoughts on their performance so far with the national team?
Yeah, it's been an interesting kind of storyline to track. Obviously, Shola Jimo has kind of worked his way into this group. Especially he didn't start the first game. Kind of worked his way in the second two games. He was great, particularly excellent, I think, against Chile, scoring in the first half. And he's a very talented player who, has been playing professionally in the CPL for 2 years now, and has really shown that he can play at that level, which gives him a leg up. Kozlowski, obviously, he was an important piece of Atletico Ottawa and their young defense all season in the Canadian Premier League. He's only 17 years old, and he's been really, really impressive, especially on the ball, and he's quite physically strong, which always gives you a leg up at this level. Unfortunately, it does sound like he's dealing with a little bit of an injury at the moment, so he didn't play any of the games in the group stage, but it does sound like he might be working his way to be able to contribute in the knockout stage. And I think we all obviously want him to be able to do that, because it would be a shame and a disappointment for him if he has to leave his Ottawa team during the playoffs. He misses out on the playoffs, on the CPL final, just to not play at the World Cup. So I think we're all hoping that he is able to recover in time to play at least some role against Ireland, because that would help Canada out a lot as well.
Yeah. Mentioned about Shola Jimo. As noticed, he's getting a lot of attraction from other teams abroad. Your thoughts that how Shola Jimo is now getting attention from other leagues?
I think that there's always eyes on a player that young playing, as well as he has against fully grown, so to speak, professionals. Obviously, Shola is a player who I believe was born in the UK, in England, so he's got a passport there, and therefore that makes it a little bit easier for him to make a move if he wanted to, if he got the interest from overseas. And I think he's definitely keeping his doors open. Personally, I think maybe he could stand to have another year in the CPL with York United, because he didn't quite play as much as I think he wanted to this year. He had some injuries, and obviously York were in a pretty close playoff race, so they needed to put their best team out there. But by the end of the year, it turned out that Jimo was in their best 11 for the most part. So I do think that he's clearly come a long way, and still has a long way to go before he makes his big move. But at that age, it's always about making the right move rather than to whoever's the biggest club that comes calling for you.
Okay. So again, I want to go back with the 2025 Canadian Premier League Finals. Would you say that this match probably is the greatest match of all time in Canadian Premier League history, or basically ranks one of those in Canadian Premier League?
It's certainly, I would say, the coolest match that I've seen in the CPL. It's definitely the most memorable, the most fun to be at, the one that has gone the most viral around the world. Definitely no final is ever going to be quite like that. I mean, we'll be completely honest, it wasn't the best game of football. Obviously, especially in the second half of the 90, neither team was really able to move the ball much at all, because of how much snow there was. So, neither team was able to quite play the full kind of style of soccer they wanted. But I do think that it is the most entertaining and the most incredible game that the CPL has ever had. And really, it was just a remarkable night that we're going to be remembering for a really long time.
Yep. One of the best remembered matches up there for Canadians that saw it in Ottawa, even broadcast. I would have to say, this matchup is in the record books. That is a match that everyone wants to repeat, of looking at it all over again. And that's full time of the Red Leaf Card. You could follow us on X, Spotify, and YouTube. I'm your host, Jacob, subbing out.